Hi, welcome to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. I'm Jessica Steinberg. I'm speaking today with U.S. reporter Luke Tress. Hey, Luke, it's good to see you. It's been a while.
Hey, Jessica. Good to see you too.
Today, Luke and I will be discussing the very latest in the New York City mayoral race. We'll include some details about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent stop in New York when he was speaking at the United Nations. We'll also talk about a complaint filed to the International Criminal Court, the ICC in the Netherlands, on behalf of an Israeli citizen living in New York with relatives killed by Hamas in Gaza on October 7th and after. Stay with us. Okay, Luke, bring us up to speed on the mayoral race. We have a bunch of pieces from you on the topic. New York City Mayor Eric Adams dropped his campaign for the re-election, which seemed to provide a boost to rival candidate Andrew Cuomo. But we still have the frontrunner progressive Zohran Mamdani. Tell us, bring us through that piece of news so far and what that looks like for the race, which of course will come to a head in November on Election Day.
Yeah, so on Sunday, Adams announced he was dropping his re-election campaign. He was serving his first term, so he'll be a one-term mayor. The general election is in November. Adams was polling in third or fourth place after Mamdani, who's the heavy favorite. Cuomo's in second place, and the Republican Curtis Lewa is usually in third place in the polls. So Adams was way behind. It was pretty clear he didn't have a shot to win. And he had said repeatedly that he wouldn't drop out. Like a few weeks ago, he gave a press conference where people were speculating he would drop out, and he insisted he was in it to the end. So it was a little bit of a surprise he announced this on Sunday. So this will help Cuomo because Adams and Cuomo share a similar base, which is moderates, black voters, and mainstream Jewish voters. It's not going to have a huge impact. Adams was polling in the single digits, a little below 10% for the most part. And Cuomo is something like 20 points behind Mamdani. So it's not going to upend the race. Also, some of Adams's voters will probably go to Curtis or won't vote. So they're not all going to go to Cuomo. But what this does is it does boost Cuomo a little bit. And it's also going to open up probably some donations and endorsements for Cuomo because, for instance, Jewish groups endorse Cuomo in the primary. And this includes Orthodox and Hasidic groups. And they have a bad history with Cuomo because Cuomo enacted COVID restrictions when he was governor during the pandemic. And a lot of these Orthodox groups were really upset about this because they felt that it targeted their communities. But they got over it and endorsed him for the primary because of the threat they saw from Mamdani. But the endorsements were just for the primary. And a lot of these groups were close to Adams. So they were kind of torn in the general election about who to support. So already today on Monday, a day after Adams dropped out, a political group, Jewish group in Crown Heights, which is a Hasidic community, the Chabad community, they endorsed Cuomo immediately after Adams dropped out. So it might open up some support for Cuomo.
But a religious political group, right, Luke? Not a left-wing group, which is also another Jewish population that lives in Crown Heights.
Yeah, this is a Crown Heights PAC that's affiliated with the Chabad Hasidic movement in Crown Heights. So, for instance, Adams is popular in the neighborhood, and they hadn't endorsed Cuomo probably due to their loyalty to Adams. But now that Adams is gone, it might open up some endorsements for Cuomo.
So you think you're going to see more of that? Other Jewish groups that have been behind Adams and will come out for Cuomo because obviously they're not about to come out for Mamdani.
Yeah. So there was this bad blood with Cuomo, but he made amends during the primary campaign and got over that, even if a lot of people were still bitter at him for the COVID restrictions. And a lot of these Jewish groups lined up behind him at the end of the primary. So I think we might see that as the close of the general election comes.
Okay. Going back to Adams for a second, who, by the way, I've been seeing some different social media posts about a Magen David Jewish star outfit that he wore for Rosh Hashanah. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Just to note that for a second, what was that all about?
He was visiting a Sephardi community in the city, and he wore this traditional Sephardi jacket that was gifted to him. And yeah, it caused some waves because it was very loud jacket, and I think most people in the Jewish community thought it was cool and supported it. So
Right.
yeah,
And
Adams
appreciated the gesture. Yeah.
yeah, Adam, like he's very supportive of Jewish communities. He has a lot of personality, and he's very supportive of Israel.
Right. He met with, right? Didn't he meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after the UN address on Friday?
Yeah, so he was at the UN for Netanyahu's address, and met him briefly after the address. And afterwards, he shared a statement saying he had thanked Netanyahu for defending the Western world. So he has really leaned into his Israel support recently, despite Israel becoming increasingly unpopular in the US, according to polls. And even so, Adams and Cuomo have both historically been pro Israel, but Cuomo has voiced some criticism of the Gaza war recently amid all this public outcry. And Adams really leaned into just unabashed support for Israel even then.
Right. Did Mamdani say anything when Netanyahu was in New York? Did he make any statement at all?
Yeah, so first of all, Mamdani has said repeatedly he'll arrest Netanyahu based on the ICC warrant if Mamdani's elected and Netanyahu comes here, even though the mayor doesn't have the authority to do that, but he said that. And then after Netanyahu's speech, Mamdani released a public statement saying something along the lines of Netanyahu is guilty of genocide and we don't welcome him here. So it was a really stark reminder of how warm this administration is toward Israel and the hostility of what is likely to be the next city administration.
And was there any response at all to Mamdani's comments from anyone, or it sort of hung there in the air, reminding everyone, as you just said, of what his stance is?
I didn't think there was a big response. It's in line with everything he says, so it was not out of the ordinary for him. So nothing new, so no big response.
Right. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break. When we're back, we'll talk about another related topic related to the ICC, to the International Criminal Court, and a charge to the ICC from an Israeli New York State resident. So stay with us for that. Okay, so you just filed a piece about a complaint filed to the ICC in the Netherlands charging Iran with genocide and other crimes for its involvement in the October 7, 2023 invasion of Israel. And that complaint was filed on behalf of Maurice Schneider, whose sister and brother in law were killed in Kibbutz Nir Oz on October 7th, and his niece Shiri Bibas, and her two sons, Ariel and Kfir, were killed in captivity. Tell us, has this been something that that you knew was going to be happening on behalf of Maurice Schneider, or tell us a little bit about what you know of this case?
Yeah, so I knew this was coming, I think last week. One of the lawyers told me it was coming. So this is it's a formal complaint to the International Criminal Court. The ICC prosecutes individuals for suspected war crimes and crimes against humanity. The International Court of Justice is separate. It's also in The Hague. They do disputes between states. So both the ICC and the ICJ are going after Israel. The ICC, where this was filed, charged Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant with crimes against humanity last year. And so this complaint filed this month is connected to that. It builds on that case because that case solidified the ICC's jurisdiction for the Gaza conflict because neither Israel or Iran are parties to the ICC. but Gaza, it does have jurisdiction in Gaza. So this complaint asks for the ICC to investigate and issue arrest warrants for Khomeini, the supreme leader of Iran, and the head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the a branch of the Iranian military. And they're charged with crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide due to their support for the Hamas October 7th attack.
And what's the expectation? Is this something on paper? Is there any expectation that something will come out of it? What else do you know about it?
So the ICC was established by a 1998 treaty called the Rome Statute, and that statute, there's an article that says anyone can file complaints with information that asks for an investigation, and then it's up to the court. The court has to look at the information, and then they decide whether or not to do an investigation and to issue warrants. So the court can essentially take this up or not. It's still unclear what's going to happen. But the lawyers, so the two lawyers who filed this on behalf of Schneider, one is named Eli Rosenbaum. He's a former Department of Justice prosecutor who prosecuted war crimes, including against Nazis. And another lawyer called Elliot Malin, who's a human rights and international legal scholar in Nevada. So they're hoping that this will start a prosecution against Iran for genocide, and it's somewhat, it's not formally connected to all the genocide charges against Israel. There's a connection based on the jurisdiction, but it's not a formal response. But it comes off as kind of a response to all these charges because a lot of the cases against Israel are based on statements that Israeli leaders made after October 7th. And a lot of them are kind of ambiguous. Like Yoav Gallant said, we're fighting human animals a few days after October 7th. And this is often used as evidence of genocidal intent because in international law, genocide is hard to prove. You need to prove that there's an intent to exterminate a group of people. So these cases against Israel are using these kind of ambiguous phrases, like the human animals phrase, which Gallant has specifically said was not referring to Gazan civilians, but to combatants. And then in this case against Iran, there's really clear statements. Like Khomeini said once, there's one solution to the Middle East problem, and that's the annihilation and destruction of the Jewish state. So it really provides a contrast between the cases against Israel based on these and not only the statements, also conduct in Gaza, but a big part of it is statements from Israeli leaders to determine intent. So there's a contrast between these ambiguous statements by the Israelis and these really clear statements by Hamas and Iran, where they're openly calling for the destruction of Israel, which would be genocidal under international law.
Luke, do the lawyers, I don't know if you covered this, but do the lawyers expect to have other cases like this that will obviously help build their case or will, add fuel to the fire, so to speak?
This it builds on previous cases. I don't know if there's more case. There's no new cases coming up that I'm aware of, but in terms of law, they build on precedents in previous cases. So, for example, in a New York court earlier this year, FBI investigators outlined the connections between Hamas and Iran. They said it was in the federal New York court, and they said like there is clear evidence between Iran supporting Hamas and its October 7th attack. So it's more leaning on previous cases to build their case because with this FBI case showing there's a connection, they can use that to say Iran supported Hamas and is therefore complicit in the attempted genocide on October 7th.
Hmm. Got it. Okay. Thanks for explaining that. One more item before we close for today. It's a couple days ago at this point, but I know you covered the protests that were against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu while he was in New York for his speech at the UN. Anything notable? I mean, you've covered obviously many protests before. Anything notable in this one? Anything that, corresponds to anything else that we've been speaking about?
Yeah, so while Netanyahu was here, there was a lot of protests from different directions against him. There were American Jewish protests, there were left-wing Israelis, there were hostage advocates, and there were anti-Zionist protests, all holding their own events. So there was a small group of leftist Israelis protesting outside his hotel, and then these anti-Zionist protesters did the same thing later that day. There was at one time at the same day, there was the anti-Zionist protesters and the hostage families were outside the UN during Netanyahu's speech. And so there were some hostage families, including Yehuda Cohen, whose son Nimrod Cohen is a hostage, and they're really upset at Netanyahu because they feel that he has neglected the hostages and not done a ceasefire deal that could get them released. So they're protesting. There were left-wing Jewish groups protesting in the same plaza in a separate event. They were protesting for holding pictures of the hostages as well as Palestinians who were killed. And then you had the anti-Zionist protesters who were there. Like I went to one protest. They had a lot of terrorist paraphernalia, like Hamas headbands, Hezbollah flags. So you see all these different angles of opposition to Israel, and you would think like some of these groups could collaborate, but they all have political differences that really keeps them apart from each other. Like the anti-Zionist protesters want to destroy Israel, and they're supporting terrorist groups, and then
So they're certainly not supporting the hostages, right?
yeah, you can't talk about the hostages there. Even though all these groups are against Netanyahu, there's these political divides. Like I've talked to even the furthest left Israelis in New York, and they say like there's no place for us at all in these protests. And then in the Jewish community, you also see the divide. Like some groups want to focus on the Israeli hostages, some want to talk about the hostages as well as Palestinian civilians who have been killed, and others are more political and focused on political criticism of Netanyahu.
And there they all stand. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, Luke, thanks for the update. We appreciate it. And, we're slowly crawling toward November. So you'll let us know when we get to that moment, right?
Yeah.
In the meantime, thanks for being with us. And thanks to all you for listening to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. This episode was produced by the Podwaves. As always, any questions you have or thoughts, drop us an email, podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until next time, take care, be well, Chag Sameach, have yourselves a good day.